Welcome to Season 2 of Self-Care-ish. It's selfish with care. I'm Megan, your host, and each week I spend about 20 minutes to an hour unpacking different ways to fill your cup after a divorce, or if you're on a dating or self-dating journey. Either way, enjoy and let's get into it. Before we get into this episode, I just wanted to say thank you for listening, following, reviewing, and just supporting the show in general. Every time you share an episode or click on one of the partners in the show notes, you literally help keep the show going. And because this is a podcast all about being selfish with care, something I fully advocate for is you taking time for you. Which is why I've partnered with Luxury Escapes, who I use, I think, at least once a year to book a little time out for myself. Often it's not even a trip that's far away. Like it could be a weekend in Hobart to visit the Mona Museum, or even just a couple of nights in Sydney to catch up with friends. I know, we're all minding our money at the moment, but that's why I love Luxury Escapes so much, because the bang for buck is so enormous. If you're craving a little you time, tap the Luxury Escapes link in the show notes, book yourself a little self-care weekend. You get to restore your sanity, I get a tiny kickback, and the show gets to keep going. Okay, on with the show. This episode is for all the people in my DMs who've shared their harrowing stories of mind games, money siphoning, and refusals to pay child support. Or it's even just for the people who've survived years of guilt trips and power trips. And if my ex is listening, no, I do not think you're a narcissist. You're okay. P.S. That doesn't mean we didn't have our fair share of toxicity, guys. Just flagging in case he's listening. But if you've lived long enough, we've all experienced, some variation of the above. Speaking of diagnosing narcissists, actually most people aren't narcissists, although we do all have narcissistic traits, she says on her very own podcast, I am well aware. But the secret sauce to being a fairly decent human being is the ability to counterbalance those inevitable moments of inflated self-importance that we all get every now and then with just long stretches of humility or empathy or, inverted commas, normalness. Experts say narcissistic personality disorder only affects about 0.5 or just 1% of the global population. But it doesn't always feel that way, does it? Especially if you're someone who is in the process of doing, the work and realizing that certain childhood traumas may make you susceptible and even attracted to narcissistic manipulation. Attracted to NPD, I hear you thinking? Yeah, it's apparently a thing, and especially amongst people who have experienced just a certain level of childhood trauma. Of course, people don't go out there looking for narcissists to fall in love with. It's all in that secret soup that makes up subconscious attraction. Like often narcissists are super magnetic and charismatic, and that can make them feel like a really safe place to put your emotion, which can be very attractive to someone who maybe grew up in an unstable household. But the problem is, people with NPD are human, and like all of us, they only have enough energy to maintain a facade for a certain amount of time before they wear out. And this is when their real self shines through. This is often called the devaluation stage. Usually it's at the point when everyone starts feeling really comfortable in the relationship, and usually that's when the relationship gets a little deeper. But with narcissists, that's when the fun really starts. So they realize that their partner is actually not perfect, because who is after all, and they don't see them as having any value. The value of a person being only to fuel their own self-image and importance, because narcissists are terrified of being seen as ordinary. And because everyone becomes ordinary if you've been together long enough, this is a problem. Hence, the narcissist begins to put their partner down or holds back on being intimate or showing their affection. And then when the partner pushes back, the narcissist might turn things around and then perceive themselves as the victim and blame their partner, which allows them to further devalue them. Lots of thems going around here, sorry. That's the biggest challenge in dating and relationships. Figuring out if the person presenting their best self on the first date is genuine, or is it a narcissistic facade? Because we all present our most beautiful, handsome, charismatic selves in the beginning, which is how so many women and men end up partnered with someone with NPD. They were charmed, they felt safe, they dove in, and the cycle of narcissistic abuse of devaluation, then hoovering back begins. Back and forth, always unstable, never fully safe. But if a relationship with a narcissist sounds exhausting, it's nothing on breaking up with one, let alone divorcing one. Not only do NPDs often play mind games, but they're also known to start smear campaigns to poison your social network against you or make you out as the bad guy. Or they might maliciously keep you in an endless cycle of court dates, paperwork, just with the goal to ruin your new life. Or they might start hiding assets. Or on a scarier level, you hear about them stalking their exes. So there's a lot of downside to breaking up with a narcissist, so there's little wonder why some people end up staying in abusive relationships, better the devil you know kind of situation. But that's why I wanted to do this episode, to kind of get inside the mind of a narcissist and arm myself and you with the information to kind of understand why they do the things they do, and in turn figure out ways to make the transition out of a relationship easier and keep you safe and keep your sanity in the process. So today, I welcome Jacob Skidmore to Self-Care-ish. He is the Nameless narcissist on TikTok, and I would say one of the most well-known narcissistic content creators on TikTok. Literally, he just talks about narcissism because he is a narcissist, one that's been officially diagnosed, but also one that's very self-aware. My algorithm fed me one of his videos, and it was the one called "What Would a Narcissist Say to You If They Were Honest?" And I just couldn't believe how much his insights opened my eyes to, this whole psychological disorder. And I guess I found it empowering to understand the NPD perspective, and it helps me navigate my own relationships as well. And he also helped me realize that despite everything I've said in the above, not all narcissists are created equal. Like most personality disorders, it exists on a spectrum, with some people completely down the malicious end, and others are just very charming as a means to gain self-worth. It was a really fascinating conversation, and if you listen, you can hear how charming Jacob is. Like, it's hard not to like him. And then you start thinking, well, was all that charm a ploy to endear himself to me? I mean, of course. And then you start thinking, well, that makes sense. Is everything we all do to make people like us because we want to be liked because that's in part of our own self-interest, which means that maybe we're all narcissists as well? So many questions. All the links to his socials are in the show notes. Enjoy, and I hope this helps. Just a quick note for all my PMDD brethren out there, or even if you don't have PMDD and you just want to feel balanced and energized and just clear mentally, this is where I shill you Shroomly, Australia's purest adaptogenic mushroom powders. I can never say the word adaptogenic properly. A few episodes back, I literally have a whole episode dedicated to mushrooms. I take Lion's Mane every day, and while I know I can sit here and tell you over and over again how much it helps my energy levels, you don't even need me to tell you. There is study after study out there that proves that Lion's Mane helps reform the synaptic connections in your brain. It's very cool. Give it a Google. Anyway, if you go to the link in the show notes, or if you just use the code selfcarishpod20 at shroomly.com.au, you will get 20% off, which I'm pretty stoked about. Okay, interview time. Hey, g'day. It's so Oh, it's so fun to interview you. Americans just have such great accents. How is it over in Ohio?
I appreciate that makes me so happy. I'm not gonna lie. I literally so like I have a pretty unconventional accent purely because like when I was younger, I would literally like I'd hear accents that I like and try to incorporate it into my accent.
Yeah.
Like I tried to create a transatlantic accent at one point to sound more like posh.
Oh my God. Because people have said that to me, because I grew up overseas and I went to an international school, so I've got a little bit of a leftover accent from that. But now you're making me question things.
I'm sure you're fine. Don't worry. You're probably not a narcissist. I swear.
I mean, we all are a little bit, though, aren't we? Apparently.
Of course, yeah. Well, I swear it's like so hard talking to people about like oh, I get this thing with people with OCD where they will get hyper fixated on being a narcissist and they'll think of every grandiose or narcissistic thing they're ever done and bring it up consistently. And I'm like, dude, you're fine. Like chill.
Okay, secondly, thank you for being on the show, the Nameless Narcissist. Or can I use your real name, Jacob Skidmore? Um, I just want to thank you so much for the work you do on TikTok, for being a light of information for people who I just don't think you understand how much sanity you would bring to people across the world who are trying to navigate dealing with a narcissistic person. But before I get into that, why don't we start with a little bit of your story? So you're officially diagnosed as a narcissist, yeah? Can you share a little on the process of determining that? And I guess, how did getting a diagnosis like that impact your life?
Sure. So it's interesting, actually. So I was actually diagnosed at the first time, at least. Well, I'm not sure if I was diagnosed explicitly, but it was alluded to at the very least. Very young. I think I was 16, give or take. I had a violent episode that, because of um, outside pressure, I'll say, I was made to go into therapy. Um, and during that time, they kind of suggested to me that I might be a narcissist or at least have severe narcissistic traits. And I kind of dismissed them because I was like, I was 16. I didn't give a fuck. I was like, yeah, whatever. Sure. Probably a narcissist. Who cares? And following that, it was never really on my mind much. I was always kind of like, oh, yeah, that might be a thing. And maybe this thing that I did is caused by that, but like, who cares? And also thinking, oh, probably not. Um, it was very much just kind of compartmentalized away. I just didn't really care. Um, then when I entered therapy again when I was 21 because a lot of my friends were worried about me because I was like in a very depressive state and I just lied through my teeth. Like it was not effective. But in fairness, this was a very much not experienced clinician. And following that, I was in a relationship with a girl and she was a very very kind girl. I she was she was a nice person, I should say, but I ended up kind of I had an emotional affair with somebody that I was on and on with up until that point, which I'm not proud of. I don't like that, but it is the truth. It is what happened. And once I got with that girl that I had that affair with, things started to go very rocky, as it always did with me and that girl. So I entered into therapy to kind of show this girl, like, look, I'm working on myself. I'm like being a better person, like trying to impress her and stuff. But also thinking, well, I did have a weird, not great childhood, so maybe I should look at that. Now that relationship went down the gutter, but the that relationship ending was probably one of the best things that could have happened to me because once it ended, I was like, I had this girl that was like very kind to me, very good for me. We were happy. Well, I mean, okay, we weren't happy, but like we could have been happy at least. And I cheated on her with a girl who every time I'm with her makes me miserable. Why the fuck did I do that? And that's why I ask myself almost every day, or at least I did. It's like, why did I do that? And so I stay in therapy to kind of explore that question of just why I'm wired wrong. And eventually, after 2 years, because I was very much defending myself in therapy, trying to kind of put up a front, of course. And I had a day where I was like, it's funny for me looking back on it. Because I remember I'm talking to her about one of my friends, and they said something along the lines of like, "Oh, I understand you." And I was with my therapist, and I like got angry about it. I was like, "No, they don't fucking understand me. Nobody understands me." And then like I kind of calmed down for a second, and I laughed. I chuckled to myself, and I said, "Well, it's like they don't understand anything." And I was like, "Well, it's not surprising though. I mean, they're all so stupid." Right? And she was like, "What?" And I started going this grandiose rant, just saying how like, yeah, I was like, I mean, look at them. They all say that I think that I'm better than them, but of course I am. Look at me and look at them. They're pathetic. And my therapist, like wide eyed, being like, okay, like, and these are your friends? I'm like, well, yeah, but like, I guess it's not all of them, but whatever. Like, I, I just kept going on that rant. And then I remember about like, it was the end of the session. So I put on my jacket, I'm leaving. I'm like, well, that felt good to get out. And she said, yeah, I'm humbled. And I said, are you mocking me? And very, very quickly after that, I was diagnosed.
Wow, this is so interesting to hear about because one of the things they talk about with NPD is that not many people with the condition are actually self aware of it. And one of the hallmarks of your content is that you are so open about your diagnosis and you are aware of your personality traits. So I guess I wanted to ask, when you're in the moment, do you just have an out of body experience and know when you're being narcissistic? Like, are you wringing your hands together in your mind, going, haha, I'm doing narcissistic stuff now?
There is okay, in the moment when I'm interacting with somebody that I know personally and we're having like a situation, I'm always fixing my hair, by the way. I apologize, but I just always feel like it looks bad. But it's never like, how do I put it? So in the moment, there's sometimes an inkling in the back of my mind being like, oh, this might be my pathology right now. But my instincts very often kind of override that and I act out anyway. And then in post, it's way easier to see. And then there's times that like it almost feels like I'm like, let's say I go into a narcissistic rage in quotes. I don't love the term, but it does like I've experienced times where I have this uncontrollable anger and I lash out at people. It's like I'm viewing myself through like it, it, some people describe it as viewing myself through a movie. I don't know if that's the wording I would go for, but it's like I know what I'm doing, and there's a part of me that knows that it's wrong, but it's like I'm acting on instinct. It's like all of my higher processes have just like shut down, and I'm just lashing out at whatever I view as a threat. I don't know if that makes sense. I apologize.
No, it does in a weird way. It's interesting. I guess, there's a lot of bad press about narcissists. And I guess nobody goes into a relationship thinking, oh, I'm going to end up with a narcissist because we all have narcissistic traits, right? What would you say some of the inverted commas good things are about narcissists that can attract people to them or to you?
I've thought about this a little bit. I don't have like a very concrete answer because it's like because I have noticed myself that like people are very often attracted to me, and what I kind of chalk this up to is this is actually a very little known fact about narcissists is that people say that narcissists don't have empathy. This is often true, but I mean that's not universally true. There's actually 50. Not 50, it's around 40% of narcissists actually do have empathy, interestingly enough. At least how they measured it in that study. But narcissists are very often hyper empathic towards people's reactions to them. Like, if you, like, how your reaction, what you're thinking about me, I am hyper attuned to. And this can lead to a lot of issues, right? Like, let's say you're upset about something else, but then I pick up on that because I think it's about me, then I lash out on you. Like, that's happened to me a lot. Um, but because of that just intuitive nature of what people are thinking about me, I can very easily kind of adjust my reactions to people and make it in a way that I know that they're going to be liking me. Um, and so I think that makes it very easy for narcissists, at least at first. There's actually a study about this too. At first, narcissists make amazing first impressions, and then the opinion goes downhill very quickly. And the interesting thing in this study is that the narcissists are aware of this. I mean, hell, I was aware of this. My catchphrase before I would, not catchphrase, but I would say to people before I was diagnosed, I would say, I make amazing first impressions. It's all downhill from there. Like, it'd be a joke, but like, it was true. I knew it. Um, and so I really think it's this attunement to people's reactions towards us and what we have to do to make them like us. And in fact, narcissists and people with borderline personality disorder, we actually can see emotions in the eyes better than average controls. Like, I think, like, there's this test that's done and it just shows you their eyes. And you have to say what emotion they're feeling. Normal people, they score around 60%, and then narcissists and borderlines score around 80%.
God, it sounds exhausting. That process of making a great first impression, does that get exhausting for the narcissist? Is that why the devaluation sort of phase exists, or that's what they call it?
I love that question because I've had a couple people ask me this. Like, I'll explain my thought processes, and people are like, that sounds exhausting. And the question almost baffles me sometimes because I'm like, that's just normal. That's just like how I exist. Like, calculating what people are thinking about me and stuff like that. I mean, I guess it is. I live a very stressful life. Don't get me wrong, but it's hard for me to say, oh, it's exhausting because that's just how I've always existed. Well, or at least as long as I can, since I was like, I don't know. I don't know. It's been a long time. I like. It's the only thing I can really relate to at this point. Um, Wait, what was the second part of that? I'm sorry. I think I missed it.
Yeah, just touching on the devaluation phase, because people always talk about how narcissists are so charming, and then it's like the sun goes down and they're not sort of giving you the same amount of attention anymore, or they devalue you. Like, what sparks that?
Also a good question. So for me at least, so when I think context, just for context, I think it's important to point out that when I meet you, like, people think that like love bombing is this intentional thing. I'm gonna get supply from them. I'm gonna like just drain them of their energy. It's not like that. But I'm sure there's some people that do it like that. Sure, there's some like Jeffrey Dahmer types, right? But for the average narcissist, it's not like that. If let's say I met you and I was like, oh, like, I'm attracted to this person and I think that they're fun, my mindset would be purely like, oh, this is my soulmate. This is the perfect person for me. We're going to be the best, like, relationship. We're going to be better than everybody else in our relationship. They're my soulmate. Like, very grandiose ideas. A lot of times we'll hide this, though, and it only kind of comes out through these shows of affection because for me, it would look like I'm pathetic if I showed somebody that I had this degree of affection for them and stuff. So I will hide it a lot of the times. But usually what happens is I'll notice, like, let's say it usually happens around 4 months into the relationship, maybe a little bit earlier, where I'll notice something that doesn't fit that narrative that we're perfect for each other, right? It could be the smallest thing. I once had a girlfriend who, like, at the time, I was like really interested. Like, I was getting really into like, I had a. It sounds so stupid, but I had a fascination with like ants, and I was like doing a bunch of research into it just because I was interested in it. Really stupid, but she didn't have the same interest, and so in my mind, I was like, "Oh, she must not be my soulmate must still be out there." Like, and then everything that she did, I was just analyzing it for any sort of like reason that this relationship wasn't working, that she wasn't the perfect person. And a lot of the times what happens is it's one of my friends. They say something kind of, maybe not even negative, but something that like makes me question like their worth or something. And I'll be like, oh crap, like they can't be my soulmate then. And it starts that process.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting insight because it's sounds like it's not this insidious plot by the narcissist to fuck up someone's head or devalue them. It's more just a chemical reaction and what happens in the brain, from what I'm gathering. That neatly segs into the next question. So, the reason I've asked you to be on the show is to specifically get your insights on breaking up with a narcissist. In your opinion, how does breaking up with a narcissist differ to, say, breaking up with a, inverted commas, normal person?
Right. Is this in the context of the person breaking up with me or me breaking up with them?
Oh, wait, I didn't think about that. Is there a difference?
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Okay, spill.
Okay. So if somebody breaks up with me, my thought process, like, narcissists think hierarchically. We think that there's people that like we rank everybody in like basically who's the best and who's the worst. And if somebody breaks up with me, what that tells me is that they think that they're better than me. So, and they think they can do better. So they're getting rid of me to find somebody better, basically. We don't have this. It's really hard for me to. I understand it cognitively nowadays, but it's hard for me to really emotionally get the idea of, oh, we're just not compatible and would be happier with other people. For me, it's always better person you're looking for. You think I'm not worth it. So if you break up with me, I'm sitting there thinking, oh, this person thinks I'm worthless. They think I do better, and that hit to my ego. It feels like heartbreak, like, or at least, well, narcissists have alexithymia. We don't really know what our emotions are half the time, so we kind of mistake that like pain as heartbreak. And I've actually been in this situation a few times where I've gotten somebody back because of that, because I thought it was heartbreak, and as soon as I had them back, nothing. I didn't feel a fucking thing, because because it was just me. Like subconsciously at least wanted to prove myself I could have this person. And so if you break up with a narcissist, if they assuming they didn't pressure you into breaking up with them, they're going to think that they're in love with you and maybe get obsessive even. I've had that happen a couple times with me. I've never like stalked or anything that crazy because I'm too proud. I'm like, fucking only pathetic people would stalk. Fuck. But yeah, so a lot of the times if somebody breaks up with me, my interest will just hone in on them. Now, if I break up with somebody, it's interesting because I have a really hard time breaking up with people. I don't know why. I'm still trying to figure that out. Like I feel like I can't look somebody in the eyes and tell them that like, oh, I don't want you. And part of that might just be I want the self-esteem regulation that they give me, and I don't want them to dislike me. But often I'll push them to break up with me because that feels better. I don't fully know why. What I often find though is that a lot of people who are in relationships with narcissists and go through a breakup is that like during the course of the devaluation in quotes, I don't like these terms, but they're good shorthand. they like they'll start getting confused about it, and our distance often is like when we're devaluing people, we almost it gets to a point that everything they do kind of annoys us, and our distance is this effort to make a separation so that they'll like end it on their own terms. It's really weird.
Oh my God, just sitting here going through my mental Rolodex of breakups and relationships. And I'm sure anyone listening is probably doing the same thing.
I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to re-traumatize you or anything.
Okay, in saying all of that, I get a lot of DMs from people who are actively divorcing a narcissist. Do you have any tips or insights, say, if you're arguing with a narcissistic ex, like what kind of tactics they might use and how to counterbalance those tactics in a discussion? A heated discussion, even.
This one's hard for me because I like it. when I give advice, like I can give insight in my mind very well, but like giving tactics against it, I'm like, man, I don't even know how to handle myself, let alone like fucking how somebody else could. But my genuine, the only things that I really think about is one, very, very strong boundaries. Because if you kind of if you encroach on their boundaries, they're going to feel attacked. If you back off from your boundaries, they're going to feel like you're weak and they can walk all over you. I always say, like my roommate actually, she, like, I've been friends with her since, like, I don't know, we were like 7th grade, and she has been very instrumental in me finding help. Um, and she's always like, whenever I find she's said, like, I asked her about this because I want to make a video on it. She was like, when I found a boundary, I just keep it there with you. If I push too hard, you're going to either feel ashamed and like retreat and just hate yourself and lash out, or you're going to, attack back. If I back off, then you're just going to walk all over me. And so just finding a boundary and just keeping it there, I think, is one of the most instrumental parts of like just communication in general with a narcissist. Now, when it comes to any sort of manipulation, so here's the thing that you kind of have to understand when communicating with a narcissist is we think almost everything you do is manipulation. If you tell me how you feel because I hurt you in some way, I think you're attacking me. You're like, when you did this, it really hurt me. I'm thinking you're trying to shame me. I think that and so I'll lash out, right? I genuinely think, and I don't have a bunch of evidence for this. I'm very, like, this is just kind of it's a very, what's the word? I can't think of the word, but it's in its infancy. This thought that I have is that being as honest with you can with a narcissist is the best way to go. Just because, one, you know that you're not fucking, you don't have to feel any guilt yourself, obviously. And two, it kind of disarms us because we're trying to get you to play this game. We're not what we're trying to get you to, we're expecting you to play it. We think you're playing the same game. And being completely honest with us, it can actually take us off guard a lot of the times because we're expecting you to say things that are like very instrumental to winning the argument. And so when you're like completely honest, we don't have much to work with.
That is actually quite powerful. And I want to get more advice from you. Like, I'm trying to think of a scenario. I wrote one down actually. Like, I had someone DM me and say they have an NPDX who is currently running a smear campaign against her. And it's sort of just telling all their mutual friends how awful they are. And I think that's meant to be like a common NPD trope. So, what's a tip from you to her that you can give?
When it comes to smear campaigns, what I always tell people, and I'm not going to say this always works, but in my experience, what happens is, at least when I was younger and I would indulge in behaviors like that, I would like people are seeing how obsessive I am over the situation, how I'm just like lashing out at them whenever I get the chance. And usually for me, it wasn't really calculated, but it'd be more of like, I mean, I've had both situations. There's calculated ones and then not calculated ones. The more common was not calculated ones. People would bring my ex up and I get like angry at them and then just like rant about how they're a terrible person, right? Because I can't accept that like I'm hurt. I can't accept that I feel ashamed for hurting them. Like, there's so much about that I just can't accept, and I have to cover up with anger. But so my best, like, this doesn't always work, but what I see is the most consistently effective is when you treat it very calmly. Because the thing is, people are seeing that the narcissist is looking fucking unhinged when they're ranting about you, right? They're like, whoa, that's a lot. Okay. I need to, I'll think about that later, right? And they might take it at face value at first, think they're very passionate. But if you respond in a way, like, let's say you have a friend who comes up to you and they're like, hey, so-and-so said all these things about you. And you're like, I don't see the situation that way. it makes me sad that like there's this animosity between us now. Like, but I'm wishing him the best, but I don't really see the situation as he sees it. You want to look, controlled, calm, rational, which I think is the most important thing. Meanwhile, he's not getting the reaction that he wants, and he's like lashing out even more. And people are like, whoa, okay, maybe the accused person is a little bit more, is a little bit more in the truth here. Again, that doesn't always work, but in my experience, that's what has the most consistent kind of response to it, just based off of how I would lash out about people to everybody. Nobody likes a shit talker, I guess.
Well, you've been so generous with your time. I know where our time is limited, but I just wanted to ask you one final question. It's the ultimate question, I guess. Is there ever a way to get back at a narcissist or to hold them accountable?
Those are two very different questions, first of all.
Yeah, I suppose they are.
To get back at a narcissist, like, I've had people ask me this before, and I don't judge people for asking that, because it's like, oh, everybody, to a degree, everybody wants vengeance. Everyone wants justice. And I can understand. But I try not to really indulge that mindset too much, because I'm like, okay, you're just perpetuating, especially with a narcissist, because you lash out against a narcissist in retaliation, that's going to like make them even more convinced of their like righteousness in attacking you. Not to mention, narcissists, there was a really interesting study on this, is that narcissists, you'll have a limit. You'll be at a point where you're like, okay, enough is enough. Narcissists don't. They have this mindset, and I do as well sometimes. Yeah, I said sometimes, but no, I have it almost all the time. Somebody tries to bring me down, I'll bring the entire fucking ship down with me before I let somebody get away, right? Like, that is the most self-destructive you can see a narcissist, is when they feel backed into a corner and like somebody is trying to ruin them. They don't care about that. That's the thing. Like, everyone says like, oh, narcissists love themselves too much. Bullshit. Narcissists think they're better than people, and so they think they deserve to do whatever they can. But we deep down hate ourselves. We don't like to admit it to ourselves. Well, give or take, but we almost universally hate ourselves. So you're like attacking me in retaliation for something I've done. I'm thinking, oh, this like monster is trying to like bring me down. I hate myself. I don't care if I like ruin myself, as long as they come down with me, if that's the only option right now, right? So I never recommend retaliation against a narcissist. And honestly, the best retaliation you can have is the fact that like, I mean, this sounds a little victimy, but the best revenge that you have the best revenge because you're not a narcissist. You got away from this person who made you miserable. The narcissist has to live with that person their entire life. The person they hate the most, themselves. And so I always say that like there's no revenge that you can do that will make a narcissist more miserable than they already are.
Oh, that's such a mic drop moment.
You seem you're having reactions right now. Like, I'm curious, what are you thinking?
It's just a really good line. Good line.
I should have just ended it like that. Just hung up the phone.
No, keep going. This is gold.
Okay, yes. So accountability. So I actually texted my roommate / friend about this today, because again, I've known her since I was in like the 7th grade. I actually pulled up literally before I told you that literally before we started, I was like, give me a second. I want to make sure I have these texts like here. And I basically asked her like, okay, hey, like, how do you like, you're the person that basically can make me like reflect on things. How would you hold me accountable? And they said, it depends on the nature of accountability. And I was like, well, fucking of course. But like, what does that mean? But she said, and it really made me think, you can, and when she says you, she's referring to me, but she said, you can be held accountable to the reality of the situation if the other person is firm and they have a strong grasp on their perspective. However, your perspective of that will likely view that reality as inaccurate. and often facts and events will be skewed over time during this, which is very, very true. Like, there's been times that I've been convinced, like, let's say somebody really comes at me at something I've done, I'll feel very ashamed in the moment, but over time, I'll like kind of rewrite history, so to speak, and justify it in my own mind. And she went on to say, so for you, it doesn't feel like being held accountable in the same sense that other people would view it. Like, so basically, if somebody comes at me with that, I'll either fall into my shame spiral, or rationally, I'll be like, I can see how I did something bad, but emotionally, it doesn't really, I don't feel it emotionally at all. And this is true. Me and my sister, actually, my sister has a couple personality disorders as well. And basically, we both make actions that we regret, and we're not proud of them. We don't like them, but we don't really feel any remorse. We feel regret because of the consequences, or knowing that we can feel ashamed that we hurt somebody sometimes, but that doesn't really come out unless it's like shoved in our face. And also I want to point out that my friend is purely speaking to their experience with me. They don't know any other narcissists. So like, I don't want to say that's a universal thing, but that's generally how it happens for me.
Very interesting personality trait.
See, it's easy to see how you guys fall for us, right?
Stop being so affable. Okay, I'm gonna let you go because I know it's getting late over there, but thank you so much for your time, your insights, and just for your channel. I think it's so amazing what you're doing. So yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. And for anyone listening, this is the Nameless Narcissist on TikTok and Instagram. Go check his stuff out.
I try my best. Thank you for having me, though.
Pleasure. Fascinating. But what do you guys think? Have you broken up with a narcissist lately? Are you questioning whether you might actually be a narcissist? And I don't blame you if you do after that little chat that I just had. As always, if you want to have your say on anything on today's pod, the good news is on Spotify, you can leave just comments on a specific episode, like thoughts and feedback specific to each episode that you've listened to. So it's not like Apple Podcasts where you can't just talk about, it generally in the reviews. But please, please, please do leave me a review on Apple Podcasts because every little bit helps. And I'm going to keep saying this until someone actually does it again. Leave me a voicemail with your thoughts. Just head to the website selfcare-ish.com.au and you can have your voice on the pod. Do it anonymously. I don't care. Just as long as I hear your dulcet tones, I am happy. And don't forget, please click our sponsors in the show notes. Every little bit helps me buy my cat tins of Fancy Feast. But as always, please stay safe, and I will see you next week.